It all started when my mom and stepdad were arrested. I never expected it, and neither did my family. But the truth is, they had stolen my savings, money I worked so hard to earn. For years, I saved up, hoping to use it for my future. But in one moment, everything I worked for was gone. My world came crashing down. I had no choice but to act, even if it meant breaking my family apart. It was hard, but I had to do it. What they did was unforgivable, and I would make sure they paid for it. Ever since I was 10, I worked small jobs to save for my future. I knew my mom wouldn't save money for me, so I had to do it myself. Over the years, I managed to save $7,000. I kept it hidden in a wooden box that my dad made for me before he died. I didn't trust my mom enough to open a bank account, so I kept my savings safe at home. But then everything changed. One day, I went to check the box, and it was empty. All the money I worked so hard for was gone. When I confronted my mom about it, she didn't even seem sorry. She said my stepdad had used the money to buy a new house. My money, my future, had been spent on something I didn't even want. I couldn't believe it. I felt my heart drop. How could they do this to me? I had worked for years, sacrificing everything, and they just took it. I was so angry. I shouted at them, but all they did was brush me off. I realized then that I had to take matters into my own hands. I spent the next few days locked in my room, unable to process what had happened. I had never felt so betrayed. My mother, the one person who was supposed to care about me, had chosen money and a new life over me. I had always felt distant from her, but this was different. This was the final straw. My mom's coldness and my stepdad's arrogance pushed me to make a decision. I had to get my money back. I couldn't just let them get away with it. I had to fight, even if it meant tearing my family apart. I knew I couldn't do it alone. I reached out to my best friend. His dad was a lawyer, and I needed someone who could help me understand my options. I explained everything to him, how they had stolen my savings and used it to buy a house. He promised to help me, and I felt a small bit of hope. I couldn't let my mom and stepdad walk away from this. They had to face the consequences, no matter how hard it was for me. This wasn't just about the money, it was about my future. As I thought about everything, I realized something. This wasn't just about the $7,000. It was about my future, my college dreams. My mom had never saved anything for me, but I never thought she'd steal from me. I couldn't stand the thought of her living in a beautiful house bought with my money while I was left with nothing. I had worked so hard for years, and she just took it all away. It wasn't fair. I needed to do something. I couldn't let them take everything from me without fighting back. It wasn't long before I learned something even worse. My mom had been hiding the fact that my dad had left money for my college fund. I had no idea. My dad had planned for me to have a future, but my mom never told me about it. She never said a word. I had assumed there was nothing saved for me, but now I realized I had been wrong. The money wasn't just about my savings. It was about my dad's wishes, and my mom had ignored them. It made me feel even more betrayed. With this new information, I started thinking. If my mom had stolen my savings and hid my college fund from me, then maybe she and my stepdad were planning this all along. They had been working together to ruin my future. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I couldn't just let this go. I needed evidence to prove what they had done. I had to make them pay for what they took from me. My future was at stake, and I wasn't going to let them destroy it without a fight. I started digging for proof. My best friend's dad helped me gather the documents that showed my father had set up the college fund for me. It was clear now. My mom had signed away my rights to that money after my father died. She had taken it for herself and used it to buy a house. I couldn't believe it. The anger I felt was overwhelming. How could she do this to me? I had always believed she was the one person who would take care of me, but now I saw that I was just another tool for her to use. With the evidence in hand, I knew it was time to act. I contacted a police officer who had been close to my dad. He agreed to help me, and soon, the investigation began. The more I learned, the more disgusted I became. My mom and stepdad had been planning this for months, maybe even years. They had used me, taken my savings, and ruined my future for their own gain. But they weren't going to get away with it. I would make sure of that. It was time for them to face the consequences of their actions. The day of the housewarming party arrived, and I knew I had to act fast. The guests were all there, pretending to be happy for my mom and stepdad. But inside, I was boiling with anger. I couldn't let them celebrate when they had taken everything from me. I stormed into the party, stood in front of everyone, and exposed them. I told them the truth. The house was bought with my money that was supposed to be for my future. The room went silent. My mom tried to stop me, but I didn't care. The truth needed to come out. As my mom and stepdad's faces turned red with anger, I felt a strange sense of relief. At least the truth was out there. But I also felt alone. The guests were shocked, but no one stepped forward to help me. My mom tried to defend herself, but her words didn't matter. The damage had been done. She had taken my savings, and now everyone knew it. But as the police arrived to arrest them, I realized something. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The real battle had only just started. The arrest was a shock to everyone. My mom and stepdad were taken away, and the guests couldn't believe it. But I felt no satisfaction. In fact, I felt emptier than ever. My family was torn apart, and I had no idea what would happen next. My grandparents were upset, but not because of what had happened to me. They were upset because my mom had been exposed. It felt like I was losing everyone. The people who should have supported me were instead angry at me. But I couldn't stop now. I had to see this through, no matter the cost. The investigation continued, and as I worked with the lawyer, I learned more disturbing details. My mom and stepdad had been embezzling money from my father's estate. The total amount they had stolen was far more than I ever imagined. It wasn't just my savings. It was everything my father had left for me. The betrayal cut deeper. But now I had the power to fight back. I was determined to get my money back, to get what was rightfully mine. I wouldn't let them ruin my future. Not again. Eventually, the trial began, and I watched as my mother and stepdad were forced to face the consequences of their actions. It wasn't easy. The court uncovered everything: the stolen savings, the forged documents, and the lies they had been telling. My mom was sentenced to prison, and my stepdad was right beside her. It felt like a victory, but at the same time, it didn't bring me peace. The damage had been done, and my family was broken. But at least now, justice was served. At least now, I could move on with my life. As the dust settled, I realized something important. I had made it through. I was going to college, despite everything that had happened. My friends supported me, and I knew I could trust them. I would never forget the pain my family caused me, but I was stronger now. I had learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about loyalty and trust. I still didn't know where my place was in the world, but I knew I would never let anyone take my future away from me again.